on, Chris.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2021 Hot Water Forum. Thank you for attending today's opening plenary. So my name is Chris Perry. I'm a research manager here at ACEE's Buildings Program. So before we get going, I have a few housekeeping announcements. For our schedule, we'll be holding this conference today and tomorrow, and then next week on March 17th and 18th. As you saw in the lobby video, your screen is customizable. Be sure to check out all the options available in the toolbox at the bottom of your screen. And I've found that if you run into any issues, like your screen freezes, hitting the refresh button on your browser seems to work. The plenary presentations can be downloaded as PDFs from the resource list in the menu. Attendees are in listen-only mode, but you can submit questions through the Q&A box at any time during the webcast. And if you want to share resources or other information with other attendees that on a subject that's being presented, there's a group chat option. We just ask everybody, please be respectful when interacting with other conference attendees. All presentations will be available for on-demand viewing within a few days on the Engagement Hub. Also, we hope you'll join us for our Shameless Commerce Networking event tomorrow from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So far, we have 7 speakers registered, and they will be giving 3-minute quick pitches for a product, service, or idea, whatever they want. We still have slots available, so if you want to join, please reach out to me or Hannah Bastian if you're interested. You can find our contact information through the ACEE website staff page at aceee.org. And after participating in all the sessions, we ask you complete the forum survey to help us in planning for our next event. So I wanted to use my time here to give a little personal perspective on Hot Water Forum. This event started as a small group in Berkeley, California in 2008. It's grown and evolved quite a bit since then. I've been fortunate enough to help run the forum since 2017. So this will be my 5th year, and that really makes me a relative newbie. I know that many of the steering committee members and attendees here have a really rich perspective on how the forum has changed over time. But I can say even from my more recent perspective, I've been floored by the growing interest in the topics presented at this conference. It really seems to me a lot of folks, even outside of our immediate hot water forum community here, are starting to turn their attention to the hot water system as a key method to reduce energy consumption and help decarbonize the building sector. So if you've been to forums in the past, you'll know and you'll understand that a lot of the themes remain constant from year to year. So we need to figure out the best ways to design utility programs to incentivize customers to adopt the best technologies, but we need to also ensure those programs are accessible to all customers. We need to better understand ways to design hot water systems to protect the public from Legionella and other harmful bacteria, but still maximize the system efficiency. And we need to find ways to improve our relationships and share information with the hot water workforce. So that includes plumbers, installers, distributors, et cetera. And, so those are just a few of the overarching themes. And, even though you'll find those consistently throughout all the forums, what I've seen grow over time is the enthusiasm for addressing, these different issues with new and creative solutions. So it seems to me that we're really at an inflection point here in hot water. And we're seeing a lot of new programs and design techniques and technologies, either available now or coming online shortly to help meet these challenges. And I think it's also worth mentioning too that during this pandemic, we're all really inundated with meetings and webinars. But our attendance, as of this morning, was 232 attendees, which really rivals an in-person hot water forum. So I think that's a testament to all of you out there. The fact that you're willing to take time out of your day to attend this event really shows how much potential you see in our ability to address our energy and carbon and health and equity needs in the hot water sector. And so actually we want to do a quick poll here with everybody on that. We gathered some general themes from our sessions this year, and we're really interested to see what everybody's most excited to learn about. And so I would note that this is not an all-inclusive list. We could have added quite a few more options, but I think it represents a decent sample of some of the key themes at this year's events. So Lynn, would you put the survey up? You'll have 30 seconds to complete the poll. Let's look at these results here. So coming in, so tied for first, commercial central heat pump water heater systems and programs and policies that accelerate decarbonization equitably. Followed by gas-fired and hydrogen-fueled water heater technologies and the residential 120-volt heat pump water heaters. So really, a lot of this is pretty even. There's really interest in all these topics, and that's really encouraging because we're going to be covering all of these at some point during this conference. So this was kind of the result I was hoping for. All right, so I'm going to move on here and thank some key people and organizations. First and foremost, I want to thank Lynn Pyle from ACEE's conferences team, who really makes this all happen. She handles really all the logistics behind the scenes. It would really be impossible to do without her. She's supported by Kim, Emma, Wendy, and Becky from our communications team, so big thanks to them too. I want to thank next our steering committee. So you can find their names on our Hot Water Forum website. They're really the leads when it comes to organizing the sessions and deciding what content is most important each year. We're extremely grateful for the time that they generously volunteer to help develop these sessions. And then next, I want to thank our sponsors and partners for their support of this conference. Our platinum sponsor is A.O. Smith, and we'll be hearing from them shortly. Our gold sponsors are Energize Connecticut, Eversource and Mass Save, Mitsubishi Electric, NIA, and UI. Our silver sponsors are Bradford White, Green Power EMC and Jackson EMC, and SoCal Gas. And our energy efficiency education partner, Southern California Edison. Next, I want to thank really all the speakers or anybody who submitted abstracts to speak. We appreciate your contributions to this forum and bringing your new ideas and programs and projects. I also want to thank first-time attendees. So there are 107 first-time attendees here by our last count, which is nearly half the attendees, which is awesome. So we want to thank you. We hope that this is a good first Hot Water Forum experience for you. And we hope you'll join us when we're back in person. And I want to thank everybody here for sticking with us when we went virtual during this pandemic. And actually on that note, wanted to announce that we're planning to hold the next forum in person in Atlanta on March 21st through 23rd in 2022. So mark your calendars. Again, that's March 21st through the 23rd. I know personally I'm really looking forward to the end of this pandemic and being able to see everybody again. And so now I'd like to introduce Josh Green, Corporate Vice President of Government and Industry Affairs with A.O. Smith, who is our platinum sponsor at this year's forum. So, Josh. Can't hear you, Josh. I think you might be muted.
Sorry, we're doing virtual, right? So audio. I think you can pick me up now. All right.
Yep, sounds good.
Again, thank you, Chris. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to the 2021 Hot Water Forum. At A.O. Smith, we're delighted to once again be serving as a platinum sponsor of an event that is a signature one, certainly for our company as well as our industry. Let's have some brief remarks, and then we can hear from our great plenary session and amongst many other great speakers and content. And certainly we want to give another round of thanks to the steering committee. Certainly, Lynn, Chris, for your tireless efforts on behalf of our entire industry and participants at the Hot Water Forum in virtual format, right? There are a whole host of other things that come into play, but kudos to the ACEEE team. And we certainly, Chris, would echo you in saying that we look forward to seeing everyone in person next year in Atlanta. So once again, welcome. We also, again, extending our thanks and our decades-long now partnership with ACEEE. between trust and collaboration and thought leadership, amongst other things. A.O. Smith has enjoyed its relationship with ACEEE, and we plan on certainly and look forward to continuing that relationship. A couple of things we just wanted to go through. At A.O. Smith, our guiding principles and values are what steer the company. The Smith family handed down these values and principles over 100 years ago when the Smith family started our company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we're still globally headquartered, almost 147 years ago. Very proud of that. We are very much guided by these values in all of our interactions, both with our customers, other stakeholders, the public, our employees. And as one point we wanted to emphasize in our values is this last one that you see on the screen, and that's being a good citizen. There are a lot of things that are going on, certainly in our country and our world, moreover, and we all have our roles to play and a part to play. But being good citizens is a base value at A.O. Smith, and it guides us on our daily endeavors. Accordingly, one of the things that we have been doing at A.O. Smith is concentrating our efforts on our corporate responsibility and sustainability initiatives. Now, the company has been engaged on things that most people would otherwise ascribe to corporate responsibility, sustainability, environmental, social governance. As a publicly traded company, these are things that are very important to our shareholders and other stakeholders. And we recently issued our 2020 CRS report. We'd urge you to take a look at that. We also have highlighted many of our products and initiatives that we're working on, so I won't use this time to do a commercial in that regard. But this is very much who we are and communicating that to the public. And again, consistent with our guiding values and principles. And then, finally, one of the great things about this year's forums past, and certainly as we head into the future, we both have challenges and opportunities as an industry and as a community. Building decarbonization, just from our instant poll results, right, already, we know that this is going to be certainly a topic of which there's wonderful content in the virtual forum over the next couple of weeks, but certainly heading into the future. Again, challenges, opportunities. Grid interactive technology deployment. Another thing that our industry is working on, and whether it's at the federal, state, or local level, or even the private market, we're going to see a lot more of our technology being able to and necessary in interacting with grid operators. Moving the market and transforming the market, something we've all talked about as an industry, and different consumer incentives and behaviors, differences between residential and commercial customers. But that's something we're going to have to, again, challenges, opportunities. Customer needs and choice, always, right? One of the things at A.O. Smith is very important to us is listening to the needs of our customers and helping that guide us. Very important. And finally, partnership, collaboration, and data. No, not going to go into pronouncements about big data and all the rest of that. But we do want us, as an industry, to be thinking about ways in which we can continue to partner and collaborate on the utilization of data that's coming from our equipment that will help our customers, but also help policymakers, regulators, and consistent with where we want to go in terms of the built environment and lowering our carbon footprint. And along those ways, right, just as a little levity as we conclude here, there are a lot of different engineering concepts, contraptions, and we're all going to be working on lots of things. But instead of a Rube Goldberg design, it's going to take all of us as an industry, as the stakeholders, as a community, to move water heating and space heating, hydronic heating forward. And we have to do that together, and we have to do it in partnership in collaboration, transparently, and making sure that we can not only move our industry forward, but do this right in line with our customers, but also our business goals and objectives. So that, again, welcome. It's going to be a great virtual conference. Looking forward to a lot of the content and your interaction and participation. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Great. Well, thanks so much for that. Welcome, Josh. And thank you to A.O. Smith and really all our sponsors and partners for their support of the Hot Water Forum. So now I'm really excited to introduce our panel for this morning, Efficient Hot Water Systems, Perspectives from Around the World. So occasionally at our conference, we've had speakers from outside the U.S. talk about their work. But historically, mostly we've been focused on what's going on within the United States. However, we're changing things up this year. We're putting the international perspective front and center. And so I'd like to introduce Matt Malinowski, Senior Manager of Climate at CLASP and the moderator of our opening plenary panel. Matt?
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Hot Water community, for having us on this plenary discussion of opportunities around the world. I'm excited to be back. You may recall that last year I presented on some of the initial findings from our research on hot water opportunities around the world, specifically for faucet and shower head standards to reduce the flow rate and therefore reduce water heating. And as I mentioned last year, I presented some of the initial findings, and I'm excited to be back with some colleagues from 3 different continents to tell you a little bit about what we have found from our research, plus how we can collaborate together and work together to promote water efficiency for shower heads, for faucets, for other hot water appliances around the world. So I'll start with just a brief introduction of what we know from working in the United States. This should be just a brief refresher for most of the audience, but I didn't know, but just want to make sure we're all on the same page for those of us working internationally or maybe working in another aspect of water efficiency or hot water. In the U.S., about 70% of CO2 associated with water use, basically the water energy nexus, is due to hot water heating. And that this represents about 5% of U.S. total CO2 emissions, about 250 megatons per year. And lastly, in the U.S., policies that reduce the flow rate of faucets and shower heads can dramatically reduce water use, energy use, and CO2 emissions while saving money for customers. On the right there is an analysis done by some of our partners, ASAP, of how water efficiency standards or flow rate standards for faucets and shower heads, how the reduction potential compares to other water using products and other energy only using products. These are from potential standards at the state level. So basically non-DOE regulated and energy using products. So as you can see, faucets and shower heads really combine both water reductions and CO2 reductions, kind of giving you twice the bang for your policy buck. What is, can this can some of those same findings apply around the world, thereby making water efficiency, especially for faucets and shower heads, a really attractive policy option as governments seek to enact new standards or new labeling policies. And what do I mean when I talk about labeling or standards for shower heads and faucets? Here I present the 3 types of standards and labeling that are in place in the U.S. First, we have the DOE mandatory standards, which have been effective since 1994. One kind of interesting note is that unlike for energy only using products, the standards for faucets and shower heads are not preempted, which means that states can set their own. So I'll touch on that in a minute here. Then we have voluntary labeling carried out by the EPA WaterSense program. You have the limits there to qualify for a WaterSense label, and that's been effective since 2007 for faucets and 2018 for shower heads. And in addition to the flow rate requirements, EPA also requires non-adjustability to basically prevent tampering or kind of bypassing the requirements, as well as spray force and coverage requirements for shower heads to maintain good performance. Pardon me. And then lastly, and more recently, we've had action at the state level, first with California addressing their drought conditions, where they've enacted a standard for kitchen faucets, and then lower requirements for bathroom faucets and shower heads, lower than WaterSense. And other states have followed California's lead, passing standards that are either aligned with California, like Hawaii and Washington, or WaterSense, Colorado and New York and Vermont. And now, most recently, Washington, D.C., the latest jurisdiction with standards, has kind of split the difference and passed to both, as has aligned with WaterSense and in California on the kitchen faucets. And I'll just pause here for a second. I think there might be a question about slides here. Okay. Chris, are we still good? Can everybody see my slides?
Yeah, so they're showing up for me. Again, if you're having issues, I hit refresh on your browser. I know, like, I've had issues with the platform in the past. If you hit refresh, should show up and update.
Or if you close out the slide and open it back up, try that too.
All right, so that's a brief introduction to water efficiency standards for faucets and shower heads in the U.S. And the potential impacts from increasing their stringency. And now what I'd like to do is just take you out of your home office, out of the U.S., and get you to think a little bit about other countries where people may live differently, but they all use water. And are there ways that we can apply what we have learned about water efficiency policies, and apply all our skills and find enough similarity between what we have learned and what the conditions are like on the ground, so that we can provide common benefits to everyone around the world. And so our approach, again, starting with the U.S., we try to prioritize countries based on where water efficiency policies could have the most impacts, starting with the top CO2 emitting economies. Then we looked at policy contexts, places where there will be conducive policies already in place, either big national frameworks or experience with water efficiency standards. And lastly, based on those, we prioritized a couple countries for more in-depth research. And I'll have some of the other panelists, I'll introduce them in a minute, and they'll be excited to share that with you. In terms of impact factors, we're talking here about energy for water heating. Again, that's where the CO2 emissions are. We talked about water stresses, so countries that are experiencing either chronic or acute water stresses, and so there may be a more initiative for water savings. And then lastly, talking about urban growth, as most of these water crises really get focused in cities. So places where there's a lot of urban growth will be attractive places for this work. In terms of policies, like I mentioned, either overarching or really specific experience, either with water efficiency standards in the past, but that haven't been updated in a while, or energy efficiency standards, as a lot of the work and the analysis can be mapped, and maybe even some of the institutions as well. Though, as we're finding in other countries, it's not usually the Department of Energy that regulates water efficiency. So just a brief summary here. What we've found, how we prioritize the countries was that, in terms of the countries that have both policies and high impacts, Pakistan, India, Mexico really scored higher. Some of the countries that have a lot of water heating, like China or the EU, perhaps don't score as high. So, a brief summary of our findings are here. I won't get into it too much. Happy to later, but the reports can be found here. What I'd really like to end with is a story about what happened at the last Water Forum, which is I presented some of this initial findings, and Gary Klein, who many of you know, got in touch, and we started speaking, we started discussing his experience and the U.S. experience with water efficiency standards over the past 25 years plus, and what have we learned, right? What things work, what doesn't work, and we came up with a set of recommendations about pressure conditions for testing, about pressure compensation, which can maintain performance on one hand while avoiding waste on the other. We talked about spray force and coverage and the anti-tampering that I mentioned earlier, and regulating the components of faucets, the aerators themselves, in addition to the faucet. And we compiled that all into recommendations that we presented to the Bureau of Indian Standards, which is working on a water efficiency standard as we speak. And so to me, it was a really great illustration of how we can take the skills, the experience, the passion that exists in this forum, and help help other places avoid making some of the mistakes, or even leapfrog past where we are right now, so that they can benefit from and avoid some of the issues that we may have encountered. So I hope that this will be an energizing panel discussion, that it will help empower the community, and first inform the community about what's going on around the world, and also empower everyone to participate, to lend a hand to some of these efforts going on in other countries. And I'm excited to present my other panelists here. So first, I'd like to introduce Audrey Fourie with Solid Green in South Africa. She has a Master in Architecture with a focus on water conservation. She's experienced in green building design and certification, and helped with some of our detailed research in South Africa. Next, speaking will be Mohit Verma with Environmental Design Solutions out of India, and he is an efficiency expert across a number of disciplines: products, buildings, industry, and he has experience throughout South Asia, Africa, and beyond. Again, supported us in India on this research, and previously also in Indonesia. And lastly, out of Moonlit Australia, beautiful Moonlit Australia, we have Richard Lambert, who's the manager of the ISO Project Committee 316, which is developing water efficiency labeling standards, and he also manages multiple Australian standards. So please welcome our next speaker, Audrey Fourie. Audrey, you're up.
Thank you for that introduction, Matt. I'm going to move quickly through my slides to provide a high-level overview of the South African context. Let me just get my slides. going. So our Constitution provides everyone with the right to have access to water, and it further places the responsibility on the state to make sure that that access is facilitated. So the minimum quantity of water is set at 25 litres per person per day, with a maximum travel distance of 200 metres. Now, this quantity is only for direct consumption, food preparation, and personal hygiene, but in no way is this regarded as adequate for a full, healthy, and productive life. Significant strides have been made to improve access to water, and by 2019, 89%, or 16.7 million households, had access to water either within their dwelling, on their stand, or at a communal tap. South Africa is a water-scarce country, and in 2018, the Western Cape region experienced a significant drought and came very close to running out of water. Severe water restrictions were put in place, and everybody had to get their daily quota of 50 litres per person per day from communal points. Restrictions were lifted once the drought eased, but it highlighted the significant change that was needed throughout South Africa in terms of both supply, demand, but also of end user behavior. The policy framework in South Africa around the provision and protection of water, installation of plumbing fixtures and fittings, product testing, along with demand-side management, is extensive, with only a few listed here. In some instances, the legislation, policies, and plans are outdated and not properly aligned, while still being based on the maximum water supply concept of the 1970s. The South African National Standards, or SANS, refers to standards that specify the performance requirements of a specific product. It is either locally written or created by adopting an international standard. This process relies very heavily on the voluntary participation of industry experts, which inevitably leads to delays. Of note is the South African National Building Regulations, or SANS 10400, which was originally produced as a set of functional guidelines for anybody building any type of structure. They were not intended to be prescriptive in terms of what people should build, but they do stipulate the important do's and don'ts, and many of these are in fact mandatory. And as part of this code of practice for buildings, where we also see the requirements around energy efficiency being captured. So Part XA informs energy efficiency and hot water generation, and Part XB was always earmarked to provide guidance around water efficiency. Part XA is currently undergoing its second update, while XB will only be promulgated once another standard, SANS 3088, is approved. So in addition to Part XA, which states that hot water supply must be regulated, and where no more than 50% of the annual volumetric requirement of domestic hot water may be supplied by means of electrical resistance heating, South Africa has an energy efficiency label designed to provide consumers with accurate and comparable information on the energy efficiency of household appliances. And although some of these labels refer to water consumption, there is no restriction or standard in place. The status of water efficiency regulation is fragmented, and the hope is that once the proposed SANS 10400 Part XB is introduced, a more progressive process can be launched to drive the development of restrictive efficiency standards. Our work on a water efficiency labeling and standard scheme has commenced, but the target date of when that would be public is currently set at 2026. South Africa is also participating in the ISO Wells process, which Richard is going to talk about more later. Enforcement of testing standards and compliance of imported products are currently very limited, which is problematic, as the only local plumbing fixtures and fittings manufacturer have just indicated that plant closures might be on the horizon. Introducing water efficiency policies for faucets and shower heads that meet the latest international standards could reduce water use over 1 trillion litres per year, reduce energy consumption by 18 terawatt hours per year, and reduce CO2 emissions by 16 megatons per annum. So how do we get there? It is essential to conduct a gap analysis of all installation and testing standards to ensure alignment. We need a uniform system implemented countrywide. We should support the approval and promulgation of the SANS 10400 XV water efficiency standards, and we should stay part of the ISO WELS guideline development process. Work should continue to ensure water usage limits are introduced in appliance standards while also updating and improving solar water heaters. The opportunity for improvement exists, and as those speakers before me have mentioned, a collaborative effort is what is needed here. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to the next speaker, Mohit Verma, who will tell us more about the Indian context.
Thank you, Audrey, and welcome everyone there. From the India perspective, before I begin, the government of India, is actively and collaboratively working with both public and private sector stakeholders over the past few years in terms of introducing water efficiency standards. They're working out for developing the standard, as well as creating many policies for promoting efficient plumbing fixtures in the market. I'll be covering three major aspects in this presentation. The first is some of the existing policies, both for the water use and water heater perspective. The second would be what are the upcoming policies in India for water efficiency standard? And the third part would be, what do we see as a potential outcome of these water efficiency standard in terms of possible mitigation and some of the upcoming initiatives from the government? So as we see, as we all know, India, we are a population of 1.3 billion people with having piped water supply of about 193 million households. There is a prediction from the government that the water availability per capita is declining, and this is about 13% from 2011 to 2025. You see the usage, 6% goes for domestic and 78% goes for irrigation, which is the major part of usage in our country. If we see the market scenario, only from the organized sector market and for faucets and shower head, the annual market stands for about $65 million sales, which is about 65% market only. So there's a huge market potential in India if the water efficiency standards are used. So let's see some of the existing policy initiative, starting with the Jal Jeevan Mission, which was initiated in 2019. This is basically a mission to introduce functional household tap connections to every rural and peri-urban households. Basically, it aims at providing metered water connection to almost as much households as possible. The second would be the plumbing codes. Like in other countries, India has a plumbing code, Uniform Plumbing Code, which was initially launched in 2008 and then has been gradually amended from time to time. This plumbing code provides the minimum guidelines in terms of material and plumbing fixtures for sustainable plumbing practices in the buildings. The third would be the Water Efficient Product India, which is commonly known as WEPI and known as WEPI. Here I would like to give a bit more attention. This is a voluntary comparative labeling program introduced in 2011, almost a decade back, and interestingly by the Industry Association, which was a collaboration of Indian Plumbing Association and IAPM of India. This particular program has a grading for water efficient faucets and shower heads, and the grading has been done on flow rates in liter per minute. The values of these grades are for star 1, star 2, star 3, with star 3 being the most efficient. All these values are readily available on their website. Although this was a voluntary labeling program, which started in 2011 has been then amended in 2013 and 17, made more stringent from time to time. But still, even though being a voluntary in nature, it has been well accepted in the country. Most of the products from known manufacturers, which are multinationals, or have their products in the market certified for WEPI. So these industry associations have a system in place, a well system in place to provide certification for the plumbing fixtures. The The fourth policy on the water use is basically through the green building certifications, which is LEED, GRIHA, IGBC, well known, and these green certification ratings provide the points basis on if we using the efficient pumping fixtures. If we see the water heater perspective, India has a standards and labeling program for electric storage water heater as well as solar type water heater. The program for electric storage type water heater began in 2010 in a voluntary regime and then got mandatory in 2016. For the solar water heater, the program has started in 2019 and is presently in a voluntary labeling phase. Both of these programs are also well accepted in India. There are, as you know, the program for solar water heater also, since it is just only a 2-year-old, there are majority of the manufacturers already lined up for getting their product certified for the star labeling. Moving further, some of the upcoming policies. In India, the National Standards Making Body, BIS, Bureau of Indian Standard, is in the process of formulating a standard for water efficient plumbing products. This standard will be covering wide variety of faucets and shower heads, including sanitary fittings as a scope. This is expected to be released this year, sometime in the middle of this year or by the last quarter. The standard provide grading of these plumbing fixtures in 3 levels, star 1, star 2, star 3, based on flow rates in liter per minute. And we have the values with us. Although this is a draft, but interestingly, this draft standard has been widely accepted by all the stakeholders in the National Committee. So the Bureau of Indian Standard has a national committee which comprises of industry associations, manufacturers of including multinationals and local manufacturers, research bodies, testing facilities, and many more government departments and associations. All of these stakeholders have jointly worked out this standard. This is an extension to what we have seen in the WEPI. As of now, this standard is into public consultation for over last 2 months. The National Committee is seeking comments publicly on these standards, and very soon, once the public consultation gets over, these standards will be ready for ready to get released and for implementation. Once these standards are out for are printed and out for implementation, any manufacturer in India who wants to register with plumbing fixture can get their certification, can get their product certified from BIS and have these star rating label on the products. If we see the policy impacts, if we keep the 1-star level of the proposed draft standard as the minimum energy performance standard, it is expected to avoid 51 metric tons of CO2 per year. However, there is another analysis that has been proposed, and this analysis has been recommended to the Bureau of Indian Standard, considering 2-star level as the minimum energy performance standard guideline, which is equivalent to EPA water sense requirements. If we use this as the MEPS, then it can avoid 71 metric tons of CO2. Moving further, an interesting initiative by the Government of India. Very soon, it is expected to introduce a nodal body in India, which is called as National Bureau of Water Use Efficiency. This NBWUE will be a nodal body in India having complete legal rights and legislation powers for introducing water efficiency standards and policies in the country. There is a national committee under the Ministry of Jal Shakti in India, which is working out the formulation of this entity as of now. This was expected last year, but due to pandemic, there are some delays in this in the formulation of this entity, and very soon we should be hearing from the government for introduction of this entity in India. That's all from my side. Thank you so much. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Richard Lambert, and I am the committee manager for an ISO committee that's developing a new standard for water efficiency labeling programs I'm here to tell you a little bit more today about the committee and the project. I hold this position through my role as a program manager at Standards Australia, with Australia holding the secretariat at ISO for this committee. I'm presenting from Sydney, and it's 4:45 a.m. in the morning here, so apologies for the tired look. I'll also say up front, before you wonder, this is not an Australian accent. I'm originally from Scotland and now based in Australia, so giving you the full international experience today. And to note, my role is not of a technical expert in this area, but as an expert in the standardization process. And my responsibility is to facilitate the development of the standard. So for those wondering and don't know who are ISO, ISO is the world's largest developer of voluntary international standards that is an independent organization with a membership of 165 national standards bodies. ISO brings together experts to share knowledge and develop voluntary, consensus-based, market-relevant international standards that support innovation and provide solutions to global challenges. If you are wondering why it is the International Organization for Standardization, but shortened to ISO, it's because the name would have different acronyms in different languages when translated. So the founders decided on the short form that has been derived from the Greek isos, meaning equal. In 2018, a proposal for new work on a water efficiency labeling program international standard was put forward to ISO by Australia, and the project committee ISO PC316 was established. As Australia put forward the work, we assumed the secretariat role, and with an initial 7 participating countries, the committee met for the first time in Sydney in July 2018. Since then, the membership of the committee has grown to 19 participating countries and 18 observing countries. On the map, the participating members are shown in blue and observing are in orange. Some of the main contributors in the committee and countries from the start include the US, the UK, Switzerland, Japan, China, Singapore, and contributors from Australia. Over the 3 years since the committee was established, members including South Africa, India, Germany, and Tanzania have joined. This has grown with each meeting, with the second in Switzerland in early 2019, followed by Singapore in October of that year, with subsequent face-to-face meetings intended to happen in San Diego in April of last year, before we had to move online with the pandemic. So that gives an overview of ISO and the committee that I manage. Moving into the project and the standard itself, ISO 31600 is being developed to specify requirements for a water efficiency labeling program and provide a set of best practices and guidance for the preparation and implementation of a program or scheme for plumbing products and water-consuming appliances. The project was approved on the basis that consumer empowerment through the communication of a product's water efficiency is a proven way of saving both water and energy. Several countries around the world, as we've heard a little bit already, have well-established and effective water efficiency labeling programs, which empower consumers to make choices favoring more water-efficient fixtures and appliances without compromising on human hygiene and sanitation. Based on that, a key focus of the committee has been to provide the criteria for developing countries that do not have a program or scheme to establish one that will save water resources. The standard covers showers and taps and faucet equipment, flow controllers, water closet equipment, urinal equipment, dishwashers, clothes washing machines, and the dryer function of a combination washer-dryer where they use water to dry a load. Another key focus has been to ensure that the standard doesn't introduce new requirements for countries that already have programs. The standard provides an understanding of the essential requirements for a water efficiency labeling program that are already met by existing programs today. Part of this is also achieved by referencing existing national product standards or regulations, and is used to provide the foundation and critical underpinnings for enabling a water efficiency labeling program that covers the requirements for the determination of water consumption and other important test procedures and requirements. Countries without national product standards may formulate their own or adopt a product standard from a supporting country. The standard then provides a roadmap for countries, particularly developing countries, through informative annexures that include suggested universal tests for the determination of water consumption and evaluating a product's water efficiency based on those tests. These annexures also provide descriptions of several existing schemes or programs from around the globe, including from WaterSense in the US, Australia, China, Japan, Singapore, and Europe's Unified Water Label. Countries that do not have an existing water efficiency labeling program may consider these examples to select and adopt those best suited for their markets and conditions when developing their own program. The standard is currently being prepared for release as a draft international standard following a meeting of the committee last month. This is when the draft is circulated to all ISO member bodies for 12 weeks, and the committee is asked to vote on the draft. It's expected that there may be a series of comments that will need to be resolved from this, and then if the vote approves the draft, it will then move towards publication. Based on this, we expect publication of the standard late this year or in early 2022. The development of this standard is seen as the first step towards having a global program for water efficiency labeling. However, it is acknowledged that there's a long road ahead before that may be achievable, and many more discussions will be required in the future to overcome obstacles between existing programs or schemes. While this may be many years away, it's hoped that this standard will globally encourage the development of national programs for water efficiency labeling, which will further lead to develop and marketing of water-efficient products and enable consumers to make informed choices, positively influencing manufacturers to improve the performance of their products through consumer demand. Thank you, and now back to Matt.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Mohit. Thanks for the summaries of your work, and hope that sets the stage for the audience Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. If you click that, you can type in your question. I will receive it and then can pass it on to one of our speakers. So will all the panelists please turn on their cameras so that we can all see each other? And maybe I'll go back to the slide with the bios. And just so everybody knows who's speaking. And I'll start with the first question. This one's for Richard. You mentioned that there were 18 countries participating in the committee and 19 observing. Was that right? Which do you think are most? Pardon? Which do you think are most likely to move ahead with water efficiency standards in addition to India and South Africa, about which we just heard? Yeah, so it's hoped that the standard provides clear direction and the necessary tools for any country to be able to implement a water efficiency labeling program. I would hope to see some of those countries who have joined the community to be first up, including, so there's Tanzania, Egypt, Costa Rica, Mexico, Jordan, Argentina, Israel, Russia, and Slovakia are some of the ones who've joined the committee. And I hope, would be sort of the first up to use the standard. Thank you for that. Excited to see where the opportunities may be. At least some of our initial research saw that, maybe Mexico, Turkey would be some other candidates. Are those countries participating at all? So they are both, yes. Mexico and Turkey are both on the committee. I believe they're more in the observing category. They haven't been participating so far. Too heavily, but yeah, they are on the committee. Thank you. And here's another question. This one's for Audrey or Mohit, maybe in that order, about the opposition that you see in store for water efficiency standards in South Africa and India, whether it's from any political groups or trade organizations. What do you see? Who do you see opposed to these?
Thanks for that question, Matt. Thanks. I think in South Africa, because the entire country is water scarce, and we do go through these cyclical events where we have severe pressure on our water resources, we do not foresee that there will be any resistance to putting in place certain requirements or restrictions or standards. And I think that is really what the country is looking for, the guidance to what is the right approach to what we should be doing, because the water pricing is not really helping guide that conversation at the moment. Water is just too cheap. And until that's addressed, we'll keep struggling.
You know it.
And from the India perspective, as I briefly mentioned, the industry is collaboratively working with the government to introduce water efficiency standards, and they're trying to promote efficient water plumbing fixtures at a nominal price to the consumers. So as such, there isn't any hindrance or resistance from any political groups or any other stakeholder group, I would say. Rather, the voluntary program, comparative labeling program, which was introduced almost 10 years back from the industry association, has also been well adapted by the stakeholders, and there are consumers who are purchasing those products from the market. The only thing that's needed to promote the upcoming standard in a widely accepted manner is to have more awareness, so that consumers are well aware about availability of those products in the market. And I'm expecting that the government will be introducing those standards with supporting awareness and transformation programs.
Quick follow-up question for you, though, Mohit. Is there a risk from manufacturers who won't be able to meet, or who do not currently meet even the 1-star level, which is about equivalent with the DOE federal standards of, I think it was 10 liters per minute for shower heads. We found products that were using 20 or more liters per minute. What happens to those manufacturers? What's their position?
Yes, ma'am. Question is valid. As the Bureau of Indian Standards has formulated these standards, they have in their committee almost all of the major manufacturers who control the organized market share. Now, these particular manufacturers, say, which will control about 65-70% of the market, absolutely meet all of the requirements for the standards. And gradually, when these standards are out and these manufacturers start selling their products as labeled, as we have seen in the other labeled products over the last, the local manufacturers who are basically those 30-35% of the market will gradually adapt these practices as well. So from the technology perspective and manufacturing capability perspective, there isn't any doubt. It is just a matter of meeting the price gap or gaining to those consumers who are, as of now, not aware about these plumbing products, these efficient plumbing products.
Thank you. Yeah, curious also from the audience if folks have any suggestions for overcoming any barriers, or if there are any barriers that you have experience with from working in the U.S. that you think might crop up. Please feel free to add it into the Q&A. Even if it's not a question, if it's more of a suggestion, I'd be happy to circle back on that. Because that's definitely how we would learn from each other. So thank you in advance for that. I have another question. This one is about other products beyond faucets and shower heads. Maybe we'll start here with Richard. You had a really nice list of other products that are in scope of the ISO standard or the draft ISO standard. Can you tell us, can you go through that list again for us? And maybe in order of where you see the biggest opportunities, or which are the biggest focus of the committee members?
Yeah, so within the ISO standard, there's the two parts of the plumbing products and the water consuming appliances. I would say the focus has definitely been much more on the plumbing products. So that was the standard will cover showers, taps, faucet equipment, flow controllers, water closet equipment, and urinal equipment. And then on the appliances side, it's dishwashers, clothes washing machines, and the dryer function of combination washer dryers, where they use the water to dry a load. Some of the, I had a list here of some of the things the committee's talked about for the future. So I'm just trying to find where I had the list. Yeah, so some of the other areas they had previously excluded from the scope and maybe revisited in the future is non-water consuming urinals, water purifiers, and looking at outdoor showers as well. Because the current one was just focusing on the indoor shower products.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, I'm assuming water heaters, right, would be outside of scope, but that's another, I mean, that's clearly the other big focus here at Hot Water Forum. And I'm assuming that would be that's in different ISO committee, if at all, right?
Yeah, that's not been covered in the initial discussion so far. Yeah.
Gotcha. And we know from Mohit's presentation, there are already standards for water heaters in India, and as well as in South Africa. I think there was a question on that from the audience here. Mohit, do the recent standards for water heaters in India require a heat pump?
Yeah, just answer to it. So that was specifically for the electric storage water heaters. It doesn't require a heat pump. They're basically stationary type storage water heaters, which is up to 200 liters. I don't think so. But I provided the link, which can be referred.
Great. And can you remind us real quick, I know in South Africa, at least the standards, current standards for water heaters only look at the standby energy consumption. Is that also the case in India, or are you looking at a heating efficiency in addition to standby? Do you recall?
In India, the energy efficiency program has been prepared for electric storage water heaters based on standing losses. It only considers standing loss.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it looks like it wouldn't probably differentiate. Well, I guess it might as well, but it may be less effective differentiating between heat pumps and conventionally fire electric or gas heaters. Okay. Here's a question, maybe to Audrey. Starting with Audrey. How could the experts that are present at the Hot Water Forum get more involved in efforts in South Africa, and then maybe we can circle back to Mohit on India? What kind of expertise would be helpful, and are there ways to participate in developing water efficiency standards?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, there's, as I mentioned when I was doing my slides as well, and I think it's a recurring theme, there's definitely space for collaboration. And I think in South Africa, a lot of the information we are using to develop some of these standards are very outdated. So if there is anyone out there that is interested in doing research or field studies on what plumbing fixtures and fittings are actually installed in homes, what are actual consumption figures looking like in different types of dwellings. We saw when the Cape Town crisis hit, a lot of the information was actually so wrong that was captured, and significant work had to go into finding what that sweet spot of liters of water per person per day should be to help them out during that process. And funding. Funding is always an issue. I mentioned that when these standards are developed, a lot of experts in the South African context do this work voluntarily, just because there is no funding available, which also means the process is much slower. And then obviously anybody that's willing to share any expertise of what they've gone through in either doing behavioral change, work with their communities, and setting these standards and rolling them out. Definitely any of the above is welcome.
Great, thank you. So yeah, sounded like data, funding, and examples of standards would be the most important in South Africa. And how about you, Mohit? How about India? What would you identify as potential needs from this community for advancing water efficiency in India?
Thank you, Matt. And to an extent, I have a similar opinion like Adri. The country is introducing the water efficiency standard in a formal manner now. But as we see from a global community, these standards, are not at par with some of the other countries where water efficiency standards are in mandate from last many years. Even the near countries like Middle East countries and other things, the standards are much more stringent. So there is a lot more potential in terms of introducing and advancing the existing standard in a very near future. During our research, we had an interaction with almost majority of the manufacturers, and what we were surprised to hear was, in India, the capability in terms of manufacturing the efficient water system is not a problem at all. Many of the manufacturers, which are multinationals, are having manufacturing setups in India. And from the Indian setups, they are supplying products of efficient plumbing fixtures to many of the Western countries and other countries where the stringent requirements are much more than what it is there in India. So from the capability perspective, that's not a problem at all. So this hot water forum, can bring in that perspective to the audience, to the stakeholders in a larger way, and getting to their attention to introduce and amend the upcoming standards in a near future time, so that the country has a potential to introduce efficient water systems in India, at least for the places where it can be widely used. Not to mention that it can be easily adapted in the entire country, because India is a very vast country. We have a population of all the mixed groups. So, but I see that there is a consumption at all the levels.
Great, thank you for that. There's a question for Richard, and I'm sure many of us have asked ourselves this. Sometimes it goes by the name of a rebound effect, but perhaps maybe there are other things going on, like for instance the increased time needed to clear the cold water from the plumbing system. I think there'll be a session on that later in the Hot Water Forum. But I'm getting at the issue of will these flow rate restrictions work? Will they reduce water efficiency standard? Will they reduce water consumption, actually? Or will people be prompted to take longer showers or turn the faucet on more? Have these issues come up during the development of the ISO standard? What do the experts present on the PC 316, how do they view this question?
Yeah, there definitely has been discussions around that. And I think one of the pieces that came out of the discussion was that's kind of broaching into some of the other product standards. I know there's some IEC committees that have been talking about that, and ISO committees, that it's getting that balance between water consumption, the flow rate, and the performance. What the hope from PC 1316 in the discussion we have with that is that what this is doing is providing consumers with more knowledge of the water consumption, and that will drive a change in behavior, which will hopefully mean that manufacturers may have to invest a bit more in upping the performance for using the lower water consumption. So kind of this is the hope that it raises more awareness around how much water our product is using. That will then kind of feed back that there needs to be more investment in keeping products being performing, but using lower water consumption.
Gotcha, thank you. So that would be maybe the benefits of labeling, is that right? Is this not just identifying the best fixture, but helping the user think about their behavior as well? Yeah, how we modeled this is we certainly considered those two, at least the two types of rebound or feedback that I mentioned, of either people opening the faucet more or waiting a while for the hot water to come, waiting longer, and thereby wasting more water while waiting for the hot water to come when taking a shower. And despite those rebound effects, there are still significant, there appear to be significant reduction potentials in the countries we analyze. So in India and in South Africa. So yeah, welcome more suggestions or questions from the audience based on your experience of what kind of feedbacks are there that should be considered, and maybe importantly, how can policymakers or committee participants help reduce the chance that there will be rebound, or help ensure the success of the standard. I think pressure compensation, like you mentioned, is a big one, right? It's making sure that the efficient fixture still performs well. We talked about the spray force and coverage tests that are in the WaterSense specification for shower heads as another way to ensure that there is enough force and that the shower head delivers the performance that's necessary. We talked about anti-tampering, so making it difficult for consumers to remove flow-reducing aerators, or at least try to encourage them not to do so, and then ensure that the replacement aerators are also compliant. I guess those are a couple of different ways that I've seen policymakers try to address this issue and make sure that the standards will deliver. Because yes, there's lots of ways that they could be defeated potentially. But yeah, welcome any further thoughts from the experts here about things that should be considered by countries developing water standards for the first time, or working to improve them based on our experience with water efficiency standards. Maybe as the next question here for Audrey, you mentioned water scarcity as something that has been motivating stakeholders, the full range of stakeholders in South Africa in support of water efficiency standards. And one of the participants is asking, is this a national problem, or is it really a provincial or local problem? And if so, do you see localities addressing water efficiency? Is there enough support for a national standard, or do you see this going more the local way, the way it has in the U.S. with California leading the way?
Thanks, Matt. Yes, that's a great question. As I mentioned, the policies and legislative framework in South Africa is pretty complex, but it does allow both provincial and lower levels of government to set their own standards. And some of them have done so in what we refer to as a bylaw, it just means it's an additional policy in addition to national legislation. And I think because South Africa as a whole is a water scarce country, that is where some of the concern comes in. Not all of the provinces and local municipalities are at the same level of progression on how they want to deal with water efficiency. And in that instance, a national framework would actually ensure that there's at least a base standard that is implemented everywhere. You will still find those provinces or local municipalities that will push that envelope and that will try and move the process forward. But there is definitely, I think, a national standard requirement to set the basic minimum of what these areas should be prescribing. And then from a consumer perspective, it was actually interesting during the research process. We was talking a lot to the people that were importing some of the fixtures and fittings that are being sold, and they were saying that since COVID started, people have been asking more questions on flow rates and performance and water efficiency, just because they were home more and they've realized that they are using a lot more water, or they're just more aware. So I think it's definitely from all sides, they are asking questions and they want to definitely see it in national policy being addressed to a specific level across the board.
Great. Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole other aspect of it, right? When last year Hot Water Forum was coming up, certainly washing your hands was everyone's one of top concerns, and what are the impacts on water use through that? Definitely touches. I mean, water seems to be one of these fundamental things that touches a lot of different aspects. There's a question that came up about how is water used differently, right, in different countries, and this is something that we tried to, when working with Audrey, working with Mohit, try to really drill down into is how, maybe the faucet looks similar, but is it being used the same way, right? Are people taking showers, or are people taking more baths, right? And in which case, maybe the shower heads won't be actually saving much water or efficiency. And then lastly, there's the water heating aspect, right? Is a vast proportion of water use is not heated, right? Or tends to be heated less in countries that are warmer. So I think those are all, and thank you for the questioners who brought those up. Those are all aspects that complicate this global analysis and make it necessary to really do something nuanced in each country. Richard, maybe that's a quick question for you. Have those issues come up in the ISO committee? How do I guess despite the local variations, it seems like the experts have settled on regulating a few key products. Is that right? How do they look at the local variations and how these fixtures are used?
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of conversations around those things, even the initial variations and using different terminology to mean different things. And that was a challenge, particularly when we have people we operate the community in English, but when it's not their first language. So they may be talking about one thing, but they're actually meaning another because of the different phrases and used. And there's definitely been a lot of conversation around things that some countries have went, well, this is really important. We cover this in our water efficiency labeling, or this is really important that we need to have, but none of the other countries do that. So it's definitely been a work to get one that was quite common across all and was seen as the key and most important ones, and then the considerations within that.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And yeah, it's definitely kind of, hopefully it will serve as maybe kind of like a lowest common denominator, right? Even if people do use these fixtures differently, there will be enough commonality that they will reduce water and again, hopefully energy and CO2, depending on how much of it is heated. Great. I had a question maybe for Audrey and for Mohit. Following up on this issue of will these standards actually save water, can you talk about the mechanisms in each country, in South Africa and then India, for how to evaluate standards? Is there an evaluation process, a couple of years after the standards have taken place, that looks at, okay, has our water how will we know these are actually working once they've been put in place?
Should I go first?
Yeah. So go ahead, Audrey. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for the question, Matt. I think in South Africa, because of the industry experts being involved in writing of the standards to begin with, and there will be a technical committee that oversee it. Those standards then are presented to the either SABS or another certification body. Will always be iterative. So the same that we see now that's happening with the SANS XA, the SANS 10400 XA guidelines that were put out. Once the industry starts using it, there's feedback from the industry, and then the panel of experts will get together and say, right, it's figure out what the next level of this standard needs to look like. They'll put that together and submit it to the technical committee once again for consideration and approval and further peer review and interaction with the market. So there's definitely that process that remains ongoing.
As I understand, Matt, as I understand, this is basically something you are referring to from the impact perspective. What these standards, bring the impact in the country when they are introduced, and how will that impact be measured, right? So for the water segment, the water efficiency plumbing fixture segment, and if we specifically talk about the upcoming standard, this is not, exactly clear at this stage, because the national standards making body has been, over the last 2 years has developed many standards which has created parameters. This is slightly different from the nodal body of energy efficiency which we have, where there is a system is in place for monitoring the effectiveness of the standard. So they have a very laid down system. But for the water efficiency standards, once we have the nodal body for water efficiency, that is NBUWE, National Bureau of Water Energy Use, we are expected to know more about their procedures for monitoring the standard and evaluating how the impact will be measured. Other than that, the usual process of BIS is to, refer the impact of standard based on the discussions in the national committee. So the national committee has a procedure of, meeting probably once or twice in a year to understand how the standards have been accepted in the market and what are the basic, amendments needed or changes needed in the standard. So with that perspective, these will be evaluated, but how much savings it will produce, means in terms of water use, how much it will get reduced, that thing, I'm not very sure whether that has been really worked out, but it has not, so far been updated on the public domain, whether they have an exact system to evaluate that.
Great, thank you. And this is something that I think maybe we'd welcome input from the experts here in the Hot Water Forum is how does one evaluate the effectiveness of these water efficiency standards? One of the participants posted sent in a link to a report that maybe questions some of the benefits of showerhead standards. So looking forward to reading that, and then welcome any further ideas. Please feel free to add them into the Q&A, and we'll share it with the participants after the call. Maybe something to consider as countries set up their programs. So we're almost here at the end of our time. We have another 5 minutes. So if there are any last questions, please don't hesitate, type them in. And I'll just pass one here to Richard. This is, definitely a hot topic and something that's come up in Hot Water Forum, and I think will come up again this year, which is waterborne pathogens, Legionella specifically. There have been some concerns that water stagnating in pipes due to maybe reduced flow rates will lead to Legionella and deaths. How can how do the experts on the Water Efficiency Committee on ISO PC 316 have they addressed this? What seems to be the consensus as they're developing guidance for countries setting up their water efficiency programs?
Yeah, it's definitely been raised a few times, and there was discussions around it. I think it was not going to be the greatest answer, but one of the things we had to identify when doing this was that that's a one that we covered in a national product standard, so more around the products, and that we knew there was discussions going on in those spaces. So the focus then, when we were trying to make sure we get this, was to focus more on the labeling side of piece. So I don't have too much, sorry, and because I'm not a technical expert in this area, but I know that was kind of there's discussions happening, and that they said that would be something that would be a really focus of the national product standard.
Got you. So maybe the ISO standard would more set up a framework for how countries should think about the different tiers of requirements, but then the specific requirements should factor in the country's plumbing systems and how the flow rates that are being recommended might interact with those, and to ensure that they avoid Legionella and infection. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's, again, definitely one of the focuses that the committee, when it was going through, because I think initially the committee started wanting to cover everything, and how do we cover everything, and then going, well, no, there's all these different situations for different markets. So that's where the decision was made that we would rough off the base of this labeling program and standard would be to refer to national product standards, because the national product standards would take into account. And then this standard, so the 316, will take, once you have those results and whatever for your specific location and climate, and then how you would apply a labeling to that.
Mm-hmm. And quickly follow up to Mohit and Audrey. Has this come up in the Bureau of Indian Standards discussion that you know of, or is it being talked about in South Africa?
I'm not clear on this, Matt.
Okay. Audrey?
Yeah, this is also another area that we would need more information on to really respond. Sorry, Matt.
Okay, so no, thank you to the audience member that posted that one. Sounds like that's a to-do for us and our speakers as we continue this work. Again, thank you so much for spending the past hour and a half here with us. Thank you to the panelists who have stayed up till all hours of the night to present their work and their ideas for how we can all collaborate on water efficiency for the biggest potential impact. And of course, thank you to the organizers. I really appreciate the opportunity to present this. As we go forward, we've heard a lot of interesting takes and perspectives. We've heard some great suggestions on what countries should take into account, whether it's Legionella just now, maybe not getting the savings that are required, that are anticipated. This is all great feedback, and please, if you have any last items, please don't hesitate to type them into the Q&A. And I again invite you to think about how we can all apply our skills, participate in some of these international committees, share data to have the biggest world impact from water efficiency standards. Thank you so much for your time, and hope you have a good rest of the Hot Water Forum.
Yeah, and a huge, finally, huge, to echo the thanks. Thank you to Matt. Thank you for our panelists again, Audrey, Mohit, Richard. Really great discussion. And yeah, for the rest of the forum, everybody, next session starts in 15 minutes.